Hello and welcome to PubShorts episode 42, Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out of. Hi,
What a
Tony.
what a great title for an episode. One of my favorite bands. I mean, being half Irish, I can't not like you too.
So, Tony, we do not even talk about the songs that we are going to name the episodes after, but you seem to have every song that we have come up with so far.
I have quite an extensive music collection, so yes, I'm a bit old school when it comes to vinyl CDs.
Yeah, yeah. I can understand. I mean, I envy, I guess, your collection because I do not have a hard data collection in the sense CDs and stuff like that anymore.
Oh,
I listen to all my music through.
well, I listen to it. I stream as well, but I also like to listen to on vinyl and CD. So yeah,
All
good.
right. So quick introductions. My name is Dr. KK. I'm Innovation Officer at Trinca and Inago. And Tony, please introduce yourself and also explain why we have titled the song.
Well, apart from being an avid record collector, I'm Tony O'Rourke. I'm Vice President of Partnerships here at Inago. I look after sort of relationships between Inago and publishers mostly, but I also work with research societies and universities as well. And PubShorts is a week, at least weekly, sometimes twice a week,
Yeah.
episodic podcast where KK and I discuss aspects relating to not just technology of impacting research, but also stuff that's happening in the world that impacts on research.
Yes.
And today's episode is really no different, where we focus on some of the interesting things that are happening in the US.
Right. The responses from publishers and journals in relation to what is happening in the US vis-a-vis science and research. So, Tony,
Yeah.
let's get to the
No, but I think
first.
it's important to say we're not taking any political position here. We're
Yes.
just commenting on what is happening and how publishers are responding, and obviously how that potentially might impact you as a researcher.
Right. So let's get to the first article. This is a statement actually by The Lancet, a reputed medical journal, I suppose. So it is regarding the U.S. executive orders, and this is the first of several such responses we will cover. So the Lancet group has clarified that it will not be making changes to their editorial policies considering withdrawal, authorship change, inclusive language, or retraction, and um it is. So let me see if I can fix it quickly. Hold on. Yeah, okay. Let's just take a quick break. So we are back, but Tony is still frozen. So let me see how I can fix. You've
That's
definitely
better.
not.
That's better.
You're definitely not ignoring me. I think you are back as you should be. So I'm going back to my notes. So I was reading out my notes. It will. The Lancet Group has promised that it will continue to recommend the use of inclusive language and accepting the author's ultimate choice in terms of the terminology when it is scientifically accurate and respectful, unlike what we talked about in terms of removing gender related terms and DEI terms on the website. And most importantly, published papers will only be corrected or retracted when they contain factual errors or if scientific misconduct has taken place, which is, I think it's one of the best things that I've read in the last couple of weeks. So Tony, your thoughts?
Oh, this is the first of many such responses I expect to see from publishers in terms of trying to protect the research from external influences. Research should be research, should be stand or fall on the merits of research and not
Hmm.
on political whimsy.
Right, right. And in a related bookseller comment, its title, Will Medical Publishers Fight Trump's War on Woke? Interesting choice of heading. So
Yeah.
we are again talking about the same thing, but the most interesting comment in this story or in this comment is that medical publishers face a tough choice in general. I mean, it is the focus is on medical publishers, and even though some UK journals like the Lancet has taken a stance, would US based medical publishers find it more difficult to take such a stance? This is my question to you. It is related to what we just talked about.
I,
Yeah.
I, I think they're, you know, they've medical publishers in the US, and I think medical publishers worldwide, but particularly in the US, that are reliant on research content from largely from federally funded organizations, institutions, universities, research organizations, um, will may see changes in their submission profile in terms of number of submissions, number of new pieces of research that are taking place, and also the nature of that research.
Right. So, Tony,
It's a,
another. Sorry. Continue, please.
no, I was going to say it's a challenging time, not just for the researcher, but for the publisher also.
Any thoughts on the analogy between the current situation and the censorship that that has been. It was in the past in China, at least. If you are not familiar with it, the three body problem series, which we have talked about in this PubShorts, it is based on the 1960s, 1970s censorship movement of science and the repercussions due to that. So just contextualizing it, because we have talked about it. So do you think this can be compared to that era in China?
Um, I think it can be compared with any form of censorship, whether it's China or anywhere else.
Mm.
And censorship in science I think, is a negative step, and I don't think it furthers knowledge by having this kind of censorship.
Yes, and in response to it, we have very, 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 very strong voices. So this is the first of two related articles or related pieces of, let's say, documents that we need to talk about. One is the Declaration to Defend Research Against U.S. Government Censorship. So this is obviously whatever we have talked about. It's a declaration, but anybody can sign it, and it stresses obviously all the things. But the most important thing, that it has a call to action for researchers to engage in collaborative efforts to protect research integrity, which I related with, as well as for policymakers to develop measures to protect scientific integrity, and also for the public, Tony, to support initiatives such as this, to support research integrity and diversity, I suppose, DEI measures. So have you signed the declaration yet?
That was going to be my question to you, KK. Have you signed it?
Yes, I have signed it, and in fact, there is. I think I've closed that link. There's another sort of running discussion forum thread where there's a list of people who have signed it. It is up to already 3,400 or something, even though it is mentioned here that it's 2,446. So I am one of the signees, and everybody is encouraged to sign it. And there is a related scholarly kitchen article written by one of the authors of the declaration itself with the same sort of a thing. And this article highlights the risks of suppression in terms of distortion of scientific record and scientific research, and again encourages everybody to sign the declaration. So Tony, are you going to sign it? And are you surprised at the number so far? 3,000, approximately
I'm
3,000.
not surprised with the number at all. I think it just reflects the concern, most free-thinking individuals have about the what's going on in the US at the moment. And will I sign it? I haven't signed it yet, but I expect I will.
Right. Now, moving on to the BMJ's Editor's Choice article published. It is titled "Responding to Fear and Magical Thinking in the US." Now, this is one of those unique articles in the sense that it is written by an anonymous author, as far as I can, and it is published on the behalf of the editor. So this discusses the climate of fear in the US federal research system, and it's written anonymously, as I mentioned. It criticizes the Trump administration's impact on research, citing censorship and bullying. And researchers are afraid to speak out, fearing personal and professional repercussions. So one of the a couple of points that I mentioned are that the researchers tend to be, at least in such cases, they tend to be self-censored as well as anticipatory compliant. And we have talked about anticipatory compliance in the two episodes before. When I read this and I looked at my own sort of nature, I think I belong to such a anticipatory compliant, self policing kind of a person, because I fear repercussions. I don't want to create trouble. That's my main thing. But should researchers do that, and would you do that, Tony?
I think it's down to the individual researcher. I think often researchers will write content, write up their research based on the journal, on the publication they're submitting to, and it's not about politics. It's not about how they position themselves. It's about the science itself. So they want to make sure their science is being communicated. At the end of the day, it's the science they want to be able to communicate.
Right.
But I do think I am concerned for researchers, for example, trying to working with US federally US federally funded organisations. I think this is an interesting time in terms of knowing what the future is going to look like and how they should then be involved and collaborate in the future.
Yes, and the author encourages using legal systems and ethical standards to combat such censorship. Straightforward thing, but legal aspects, I think we talked about it. In 22 states have filed, I think, lawsuits against or legal measures against the freezing funds, if you remember, Tony, in the US.
Yeah, that's
As
right.
well, as well as it calls for accountability and rational leadership in healthcare. So there's a lot of healthcare related aspects because that seems to be the most affected, at least in terms of some of the measures that in terms
Yeah,
of
lots
grant.
of healthcare related aspects. We've seen all these stories about sort of tens of thousands of layoffs and redundancies in federally funded agencies because those agencies just have no certainty about their future funding.
Yes, and not surprisingly, SSP's board of directors also has come out with a statement reflections on the current moment from SSP's board of directors. So SSP again has confirmed that it's committed to diversity and supporting member well-being, and they have a mental health awareness group. They mentioned it in this, as well as it promotes inclusivity and equitable values through the C4 DISC. The Coalition of Diversity and Inclusion in Scholarly Publishing
Yeah.
Community. And SSP's mission, as always, Tony, you can explain more about it, is to advance scholarly communication through collaboration and networking while maintaining research integrity and DEI, right? So, your
Yeah.
thoughts?
That's right. Well, SSP is one of the most important organisations, as far as I'm concerned, in the field of scientific publishing. They have an annual conference every year which attracts delegates in four figures. It's a big event. In fact, I'm going this year. It's in Baltimore, in the US. And it also has lots of training and opportunities for development for members. So no, it's a very good and very important organisation.
Yeah, and apart from you, the members from Inago and Charlesworth attend a lot of these conferences and are part of some of these working groups in terms
Yeah,
of
that's important.
research integrity related aspects and everything. So we are firmly in support of such measures and such statements.
One thing maybe I should have touched upon earlier in terms of inclusivity and diversity is clearly becoming an important issue now. If you're an author and if you're not sure whether you're using language, particularly if English isn't your first language, if you're using language that may or may not be considered inclusive, and you want to check that, we have resources through our Trinker AI platform, which will help you to identify the use of potentially language that might fall foul of the review process.
Yes,
So
yes.
just let us know, we can help you to identify that language.
And this is especially valid if you're planning to publish in the JAMA network of journals as well, because
Yeah,
JAMA has have issued a statement again. It's an editorial. It's titled "Reaffirming the JAMA network commitment to the health of patients and the public." So it's pretty much the same thing. They're all in support of whatever policy they had in place before the executive order came in, and it encourages obviously the maintenance of scientific integrity and open communication, and the editorial team, remember Tony, you just mentioned it, emphasize the diversity, equity and maintaining high editorial standards, and this also clearly applies to the submissions as well as the manuscript, especially in the medical sciences area, right, Tony?
absolutely right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And in a similar statement, PLOS has issued a statement, the same sort of a thing, but it emphasizes again DEI, its support for DEI measures as well as open science. So all of this, I mean, I'm so happy that at least one of our products is so DEI focused and has a wonderful check for that to check for DEI related issues in your manuscript before you submit to any of these journals. So if you're a researcher or an author, if you're submitting to these journals or any journal for that matter, you can use some of our products to
Yeah,
ensure.
just need to go to trinker.ai and they'll be able to upload your paper and do those kinds of checks.
Yes.
Yeah, some of it's for free, some of it you have to pay for, but that facility is there. The thing I think is worth bearing in mind is that the landscape in the research landscape, particularly for an early career researcher, is changing so much. The rate of change is so fast that you need to work with professional organizations like us to help you sometimes just to navigate that changing landscape.
Right. Right, and moving on to our last major, big story. I mean, this is Tony. Before I looked at all the stories that we need to talk about. Sorry, you're laughing at the, I think, smiling at the photo. But this was the only story until
No,
it.
I'm smiling at some of the language some of the rhetoric that's being used in these papers, like a blizzard of legislation, a siege of science. This is terminology that even 12 months ago we would never have considered.
Yes. So as I was saying, all these responses and statements have all come up in the last week or so, as we speak on the 28th of February, and this is a roundup of what has happened in the last month. And we have talked about a lot of this. So this is a Nature News article title, as you said, Trump's siege of science: how the first 30 days of the Trump administration unfolded and what's next. So it covers obviously the first month, and the things that I noted specifically has as to the repercussions of these orders are thousands of employees at science agencies have been laid off. Tony, executive
Yeah,
orders restrict federal actions on gender ideology, and DEI, obviously inclusion programs, face termination, and federal grants, loans, etc. are frozen for review. So, and these layoffs, when we are talking about layoffs, it is affecting early career researchers as well. So, this is what
yeah.
I noted as like some of the key points. So, if what, in your opinion, is the most negative aspect of all of these in the context of academic publishing industry in general? If
I suppose that's an interesting question, and one I hadn't particularly thought of. But I suppose the biggest impact for me is kind of the uncertainty this creates. Okay, we all know politics is politics, and policies can change over with different regimes. So who knows what will happen with the next presidential the next president, and what will change as a result. Then, but what has happened here has created so much uncertainty. It's unsettled the equilibrium so much that it makes me wonder if you're thinking about a career in research, whether you'd think again about whether it's a long-term viable career for you. That's the thing that concerns me, and it is a viable career. It's a fantastic career for those who do it. Um, um, but if you're funded by a US federal agency, there are new rules that you have to play by.
Yeah, I mean, apart from, so if I were to ask this question to myself, I mean, if I were to answer this, the question that I posed to you, I would say that it is related to medical research and the funding related. So the worldwide, the
Yeah,
effects of potential freezing of the freezing of funds and the potential effects of it. That's probably the worst from an academic publishing point of view. The DEI measures and the language measures are, that they are important, but they're probably not as
but the
consequential. Yeah,
impact of
trial.
freezing sort of
Yeah.
national programs, for example, is
Yes.
serious.
Yes, yes. And Tony, with that,
Not just in the US.
yes, yes. And with that, we have come to the one quick hit because I had to fit it in somewhere. So this is Silverchair ACS partnership news. So the news story obviously reads ACS Publications partners with Silverchairs for next generation delivery platform. So for many of our listeners may not be aware of what this delivery platform is. So in a nutshell, Silverchair is a leading independent platform is a partner for publishers in terms of providing solutions for letting content accessibility, etc. So ACS Publications has partnered with Silverchair for the content hosting platform. So what is being talked about is about 1.9 million articles which will be accessed about 0.4 billion times in a year will be through this new platform. And so I just wanted to ask you, Tony, I mean, you've been in the industry for a long time. So what are your thoughts on the partnership? And in general, what are your thoughts on academic content hosting platforms? And, some of the changes that publishers and these platforms are undergoing in terms of technology?
Well, the most important thing for a researcher is that they probably won't even know what platform they're
Mm-hmm.
looking at
Right.
when they're going onto a publisher site. Publishers choose platforms that will deliver content securely, that will deliver content reliably, that's keeping up to date with the latest technology, whether it's AI or anything else. That's cost effective for them. They have the choice of either building their own or working with a third party, and I've worked with organizations that have done both. And there are benefits and disadvantages to both. But the most important thing, the thing that every publisher has in common is that, the platform is kind of, the author, the researcher shouldn't know or care whether it's one platform or another.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that particular platform, and Silverchair is a very good example, is be able to deliver content securely, safely, reliably, consistently, persistently to researchers when they need it. And obviously, ACS have made a strategic decision to move to Silver Chair, which is a growing organisation, one that's becoming increasingly important in our space. They recently acquired, for example, the Scholar One manuscript submission platform from Clarivate. I don't know if acquired is the right term, but they've taken it over. So that when you're submitting papers to a journal, very often you'll be using a Silver Chair product, Scholar One, as part of that process. So, again, to summarize, it's really important. Publishers change platforms on a regular basis because they want their content to be delivered to their researchers in the best way.
Right, Tony. I'm just switching back to the big video where we our videos without sharing screen. So you have been involved in conversations with publishers in terms of technological improvements and workflows and everything. So what are the main things that you have gleaned from these conversations? What are publishers looking for in terms of improving their infrastructure?
Well, publishers are, I suppose this year is a good example. Publishers are keen, always looking to improve the efficiencies within their workflows. So they can make it easier for authors to submit papers. They can make it easier for authors to make their content as good as possible when they're submitting or during that publication process. So what we're finding, for example, this year is that an increasing number of publishers, particularly some of those larger publishers, are now starting to implement new technologies, new AI-based technologies, in order to drive those improvements. Instead of it taking an editor of an hour to check a paper, it might take them 10 seconds to check the paper using AI, but then spend that hour doing really useful, constructive things to then improve the paper that they've received. So I think this year, the big thing more than anything this year is going to be the adoption of AI within the publishing sector.
And I think you predicted that. I think in the New Year's episode as well, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So yeah. All right. So that brings us to all the stories. We finished discussing the stories on this episode 42, stuck in a moment you cannot get out of. So Tony, if somebody were to watch us for the first time and were curious about the titles and everything, how can they find more about it, and where can they reach out to us?
Yeah, so PubShorts episodes can be found on LinkedIn. Just search PubShorts in the LinkedIn search box, or on YouTube, and where we have a PubShorts channel, so where you can follow, like, share the videos that we produce. So there are 41 episodes already uploaded. So please go to YouTube or LinkedIn to download this episode or previous episodes. And if you want to contact either KK or me, you can get us again on LinkedIn, or you can contact me directly at tonyo@anago.com.
Excellent. And I cannot leave you without asking you a music-related question. Your favorite U2 song? Maybe I'll pin the decade for you.
This is one of them. This is a great song. I tend to use Stuck in a Moment You Can't Get Out of. I tend to go back to their earlier stuff. The
80s or 70s.
The 80s. Yeah,
okay.
No, the 80s. They weren't really a 70s band. The 80s, the early 80s stuff.
Okay.
That's when I saw them the most times as well.
Right. And what do you think of Edge's guitaring?
I think his effects are fantastic.
Okay. And do you use that many delays and reverbs?
I wish.
Okay. On that wishful note, we bring to the end of PubShorts episode 42, Stuck in a Moment You Cannot Get Off. And until the next episode, on behalf of Tony and everybody else who supports in getting such content out to you, this is Dr. KK signing off. We'll see you in the next one. Bye, Tony.
Thanks, KK. Bye, everyone.